Schönen guten Abend, herzlich willkommen hier im Kino Atelier am Bollwerk in Stuttgart. Wir freuen uns sehr, Ihnen heute Abend die Premiere der irisch-finnischen Koproduktion PARKED, GESTRANDET vorstellen zu dürfen. Und eigentlich sind es nämlich sogar zwei Premieren, die wir heute Abend hier feiern dürfen, denn der Film wird von der Stuttgarter Firma Duafilm in die deutschen Kinos herausgebracht und es ist der erste Film, den die Firma als Verleiher in die Kinos bringt. Bitte begrüßen Sie ganz herzlich die beiden Geschäftsführer, Steffen Hornung und Richard Kilian.
Ja, also vielen Dank auch von unserer Seite, dass ihr da seid. Es ist eben tatsächlich so, es ist nicht nur die Premiere eines Debütfilms, eines Debütregisseurs, sondern letztendlich auch unsere Premiere als Newcomer im Verleihbereich. Deshalb sind wir natürlich besonders froh, wir haben ein sehr ereignisreiches Jahr hinter uns, seit wir den Film vor ziemlich genau einem Jahr eigentlich in Mannheim am Festival gesehen haben, gesagt haben, das ist genau der Richtige, um damit auch zu starten für unsere Idee. Und wir würden jetzt hier nicht glücklich dastehen mit der Premiere, wenn wir nicht von Anfang an auch Partner dabei gehabt hätten, die an den Film mitgeglaubt haben und an uns mitgeglaubt haben. Da möchten wir uns natürlich auch sehr herzlich bedanken. Sehr früh dabei war die MFG Filmförderung. Ich sehe gar nicht, wer gerade alles da ist, Helene auf jeden Fall. Vielen Dank an dieser Stelle. Die MFG Filmförderung unterstützt uns bei der Herausbringung des Films. Ein Applaus dafür. Und wir haben natürlich auch auf der Seite der Umsetzung der Herausbringung und sowas sehr erfahrene Partner mit im Boot. Da möchte ich erwähnen, Barnsteiner Film, die Barnsteiner als Vertriebsagentur und auf der anderen Seite auch die Filmpresse Mäuser, die uns da auch sehr gut unterstützt hat. Auch da gibt es bei allen anderen Beteiligten von der Synchronisation bis zum Plakat und allem, alle die da sind, schön, dass ihr da seid und vielen Dank an euch alle, dass ihr auch wirklich von Anfang an dabei gewesen seid und uns so super unterstützt habt. Ja, und natürlich allen restlichen Gästen vielen Dank fürs Kommen und von unserer Seite schon mal dann gute Unterhaltung beim Film. Und ich gebe mal wieder ab. Danke.
Dankeschön. Steffen Hornung hat es gerade erzählt. Die beiden haben den Film auf dem Filmfest in Mannheim-Heidelberg gesehen. Was er noch nicht erzählt hat, ist, dass der Film da auch den großen Preis gewonnen hat im letzten Jahr. Außerdem hat er schon diverse Publikumspreise abgesahnt, nämlich bei Festivals in Frankreich und in Belgien. Und auch mehrfach ist er ausgezeichnet worden für den besten Debütfilm. Wir freuen uns sehr, dass heute Abend der Regisseur und der Hauptdarsteller hier sein können. Bitte heißen Sie ganz herzlich willkommen hier in Stuttgart. Please welcome the director of the film, Darragh Byrne, and actor Colm Meaney.
Es tut mir leid, mein Deutsch ist nicht so gut. In fact, it's non-existent. That's where we all learned that German people speak perfect English even better than Irish people, I think. And it really, I don't have much to say really, other than a huge thank you to, on behalf of Ripple World Pictures, the cast and crew of this film, to Jewel Film for distributing this film in Germany. You know, this is a film has been around the festival circuit for some time and has been distributed a little bit in Europe, obviously in Ireland and the UK, and it's been very warmly received. But this is a very important moment, I think, for the life of this film that we would hope will go on and have a ripple effect and hopefully be graciously received as time goes on. I don't want to say too much about the movie. I want to introduce this very special gentleman who's come all the way with his good wife Inez from Mallorca to be here tonight to support the film. He's been very He's been very kind and generous with his time, and I can't say enough good things about that man, but I'll get to that. I have to say some bad things. Really, as I say, in terms of the film itself, I think we'd like to think that the film speaks for itself. I think we're going to have a little bit of questions and answers afterwards, if you'd be good enough to stay. I think we have a lot to answer for, really, don't we? I probably do, anyway. Yeah. And so we'd very much enjoy having a chat with you later on, but not to sort of preempt the film in any way. As I say, hopefully this film seems to resonate with audiences and touch people in a meaningful way, and hopefully give you our full permission to laugh and to cry if you need to. It hopefully will bring you on a nice journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy part. I'm going to put you on now to Mr. Meaney, who I'm sure will say some words.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Darragh said about there's some films you make and you care about them and you hope they will have a good release and audiences will receive them. And some you don't particularly care about, you know. So this is one I really care about, and I'm very, very glad. And again, it's lovely to see it having good distribution in Germany. You're obviously a hugely important audience, and we hope you like what you see, and we'll come back later and maybe we'll see how dangerous it might be to come back. But no, we will be back later and talk to you, and it'd be lovely to hear what you think of the film. And thank you all for coming.
Und jetzt wohnen Sie wieder hier in der Gegend?
Ja, nicht weit weg von hier. Klein und bescheiden. Inmitten unseres Wegs im Leben. Ich wandelte durch finstere Bäume. Haben Sie ihm gesagt, dass ich nirgendwo anders hin kann?
Ja, so sind nun mal die Vorschriften.
Da ich die rechte Straße aufgegeben.
Immer, ich habe ja auch nur noch mein Auto. Es heißt gar nichts.
Du solltest vorsichtig sein. Wieso machst du das?
Damit kann ich die ganze Scheißwelt vergessen.
Da ich die rechte Straße aufgegeben.
Du könntest ein bisschen selbstbewusster werden.
Wen haben wir denn da?
Ich hab was für Sie.
Nicht genug wildes Leben heute.
Die ganze Zeit habe ich weiter Beiträge bezahlt.
Jules, willst du nicht fragen, ob sie mit dir ausgeht?
Ja, ich bin Fred, ich wohne im Auto. Möchten Sie zum Essen kommen? Gütiger Gott.
Die Alten haben einfach mehr Charakter.
Weißt du auch mal hier?
Och, für sowas bin ich zu alt. Ich hab dir vertraut!
Darragh Byrne und Colm Meaney. Darragh, let me ask you, please. You're making films for 20 years, mainly documentaries and TV productions. Why did you decide to make a feature film, and why did you decide to make this feature film?
Very good. Because I got tired, I suppose, of not having a script, really. So, I mean, I'd made a lot of documentary films. I'd made even a documentary film about homelessness at one point, but I kind of felt with this particular story that there was an opportunity to tell a story that might resonate in a more powerful manner for people in dramatic terms. So really Parked is kind of, you know, a triumvirate of characters looking at three people who are gestrandet, who are parked, unable to move forward or back, and looking intensely at those characters and how they behave once they're parachuted into this car park, and in particular, obviously, Fred Daly. So it was just irresistible, I suppose, to kind of look at that in dramatic terms and just see where it would go, really, you know, in a way. And that is how Parked kind of started, I suppose. You know? Yeah.
At what stage did you know that you'd like to make the film with Colm Meaney?
Cut to. I think it was. What were we drinking in your house in Mallorca? I was lucky enough. Colm read the script and was interested in the script, so I went along to meet Colm, and we kind of hit it off and had an affinity, I think, with the character, and decided that there was a strong enough trust, I suppose, between us to try and make what was really quite a risky film to make in lots of respect, especially for Colm. So he was very courageous and kind of jumped into it in a very intense way, and we did a lot of early work on the character long before we shot the movie. So by the time Colm got to set, he was very much, I wouldn't say in character, but he was certainly had a very, very strong feel for the character, and made my job relatively easy on set and so on. But yeah, I mean, Colm was a gift sent from God, really, for me as a first-time director. You know? Yeah.
Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about that? How did you prepare for the work, and did you know at once that you'd like to work with him?
Yeah, well, I was in character from the time I met Darragh, and I stayed in character for about 18 months. That's a joke. I am not Daniel Day-Lewis. No, I'm not a you know, unless there's a specific skill or something you need to learn for a character, preparation for me is more about thinking and discussing and figuring out, asking questions about the character. And it was, for me, it was great to meet Darragh early in the process. Like we first met him 3 or 4 months before we started filming, and then we met again about 2 months before we started filming, and continued where we kind of left off. And we had these were like 2 or 3 day sessions, and to me that was really important and useful. We asked a lot of questions about the character, about what caused him to be where he is, and you know, when you do that, when you ask, and that's something I actually learned from a great English director, Steffen Hornung. The people would ask me what makes Steffen a great director, and I think my answer was always that he asks so many questions. He just, you know, that by the time you come to film something, you feel very secure in what you're doing, because you feel you've looked at it from all the possible angles. And that's kind of what we did with this. Because for me, it was one of the, I mean, I love the script and I love the story and I wanted to do it, but from a kind of selfish, personal point of view, as an actor, I wanted to play this part because it was a kind of a type of character I hadn't played before. A very introverted sort of, I was kind of known a bit for playing bigger, you know, more sort of jolly characters, if you like. And this to me, I thought this is a real challenge. So to kind of get that right, it was important for me to have that time with Darragh. And also, I think it's important in terms of preparation. My way of doing it is to get an early start like that. And you have a kind of, and this is something I think I learned from theatre, that you have a longer rehearsal process in theatre, and you just have time to, the character's time to gestate in your head, to kind of mature. And it's not something you consciously do necessarily, it's just a time of, as I say, gestation, and hopefully by the time you roll up, you know what you're doing.
It's a little bit like a film for the current financial crisis and economic crisis, so how much does that resemble a current situation, and do you see things like these often? I mean, I guess you would never live in a car yourself.
I've never lived in a car, no. There's people who want me to live in a car, but, and I have a daughter who still wants to go travelling in, you know, kind of one of those motorhomes, and things like that. But no, I mean, you know, we as an actor, you play parts all the time that you've never actually experienced in your own life. I've never killed anybody, but I've played a few murders. And you know, equally, I've never been a cop, but you know, I've never been a priest. But you know, these things you don't have to. You don't have to experience them personally to be able to play them. And it's acting is ultimately a work of imagination. You know.
There's the other very strong story with the drug situation. How did you prepare for that together with the actor? How did you go about that?
Well, I think Colin Morgan, who plays, I'm sure there's some people here who've heard of Colin Morgan. Is there anyone who's heard of Colin Morgan? I'm sure they have. Who's a very, very fine actor who played Cathal in this picture, and he did an excellent job, really, you know. And Colin, you know, I think Colin would definitely come from the school of "Why don't you try acting, dear boy?" And Colin is does it in a similar way, but slightly different. He does Colin does research as well, but I think Colin inhabits a role very, very intensely, and he was very thick into character a lot of the time. Did a lot of research, and Colin went to some sort of drug rehabilitation centres and various sort of background research that we engaged in before shooting, so that we would have a strong affinity and understanding, obviously, of the intricate behaviours of someone who was into sort of drug misuse. We were very conscious of like not kind of presenting stereotypical characters generally in this world of homelessness. That was very much a strong intention, a determined intention of the film from the outset, was not to present a kind of stereotypical world of homelessness, and that these would be very much more than even three-dimensional characters, that people would develop an understanding of that world that might actually get them to think a little bit about the people they're seeing when they not just walk down the street, but the people that they don't see when they walk down the street. Because those people, there's a whole hidden world of, never mind mobile homelessness, most of, you know, homelessness is something that sort of, you know, doesn't really knows no name really, or has anyone can fall through the net. I think that's one of the messages of the film to some degree, you know.
There's another plot involved, a little love story between Fred and Juliana. How do you feel about that? I mean, after all, Fred's quite a loser. She's quite settled. The end is open.
Yeah, what happens to Fred and Julie? It's the sequel. Yeah, I think it was there on the page. It was, you know, it was in the writing that I think he's sort of smitten by her, but you know, again, as with the rest of his life and all other aspects of his life, he doesn't quite know what to do or how to deal with it, or and it's you know, as you see in the film, it's the prompting of Colin that he makes. Could, you know, even begins to think that he could possibly, you know, even have a cup of tea with this woman. So yeah, I mean that's another in terms of what brings Fred back into the world. Definitely that relationship is a huge part of that. I don't think he's harbouring any illusions about a future relationship with Jules, though. I think he's kind of aware of the difference in sort of their life experience. I don't think he would dare hope that, you know.
I've got another question for you. Can you tell us something about the locations?
Yes. Well, the locations for the movie were a very very cold car park in the middle of the worst winter in Ireland for 4 decades or more, probably. I think in record, it was very, very cold, and poor Colm here, along with all of us, had to put up with.
Yeah, but you're in Canadian Goose Park all the time. I was in the underwear.
This is true. You were doing worse than that, weren't you? Yeah, we rained on him. We made him jump off diving boards too many times, and there was a lot to do for Colm. I mean, this was a big ask for any actor, actually, you know. But I think, you know, the cold temperatures, and let's face it, this is a low budget picture. So, you know, Colm was very, it has to be said, courageous, brave, and all those things, and put up with it all. And
I was very pissed off a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, you know, it's part of the process. So you know, the locations, getting back to that, I suppose the car park was key. That was, we scouted locations up and down the coast of Ireland for a long time, and then always came back to this kind of derelict industrial wasteland space that mirrored beautifully Fred's character, who was kind of caught. Fred's character is obviously caught in time, almost trying to fix literally time, and this was kind of, this location was kind of out of step with the rest of the city, and for that reason it seemed like the perfect world for Fred to be parachuted into. The other locations, indeed, the swimming pool in particular, was kind of the antithesis of that, and it was something of, if you will, a hangover from the sort of boom periods in Ireland. Of, it's the opposite of the derelict wasteland car park, and this world that these guys took refuge in seemed somewhat ironic and tempting and interesting in lots of ways. So those sort of two big locations, all the other locations, I'm just trying to think what they were, but you know, were you know, very consistent with the general design of the film, which was, yes, stripped down, and yes, quite bleak, without being, we were very conscious obviously that we didn't want to make a bleak film, because, you know, that who gets up in the morning and goes, I can't wait to go to the bleak film. So we were conscious of trying to warm things up a bit, and therefore obviously the grade, for instance, of the film and the differing tones that John Conroy shot so beautifully exist within the film. And you have a very cold blue feel to a lot of the car park scenes, and then you have a lot of warmth to, for instance, to Milka, Jules's character, played by Milka Alroth. Jules's character, her house, for instance, is very warm and inviting. So that was all very deliberate in the context of the locations and the design. Yeah.
Can you fill us in a little about the co-production thing? It's a European co-production. It's Irish-Finnish, which is not done so often. Could you have done the film without the Finnish part, and what role did they play? What did you do there?
Sure. We probably couldn't have made this film without the co-production participation of Helsinki Filmi and their support in the film. They were very good, and they came in quite late into the financing of the film. Milka Alroth obviously is a Finnish actress who was perfect for the role. I mean, that was a very difficult role to play. There was very little on the page for Milka to work with, and I think she pulls off a beautiful, subtle performance, you know. We did the sound post-production of the film in Helsinki, and it was a joy to work there. They were brilliant to work with, and it was altogether a very smooth and brilliant co-production experience, really. Yeah.
I'd really like to open up the discussion to the audience. Gibt es denn Fragen aus dem Publikum? Die Zuschauerin hat den Film zum zweiten Mal gesehen und hat gesagt, sie hat jetzt sehr viele Details sehen können beim zweiten Mal. Und sie hat sich gedacht, dass zum Beispiel Freds Kleidung sehr teuer aussieht und er auch sehr vorbereitet ist in dem Auto mit seinem Wassertank. Wahrscheinlich auch der Blume, die ist mir aufgefallen. I've seen the flower. He makes it really like his beautiful home in the car. Und sie möchte gerne dazu nähere Informationen haben.
Yeah, well, I mean, all that detail, you know, which Colm got into in terms of, you know, even his character and even in prep, even just days before shooting, would have been into the back of the boot of his car, figuring out what should be there and shouldn't. But essentially, I think to answer your question, because I think where it's coming from is Fred's whole sort of believable world and his backstory, and whether or not, how did this guy end up in this car park who's got these nice clothes? To answer that, that's a long, I'll try and give you the short answer, which is, you know, that Fred's world, to drop him in as a kind of a mysterious character into this world, there was some scenes cut from the film that were deleted scenes, which we had at the top of the film, that were, you know, some of Fred's backstory in England, and we cut those scenes for the simple reason that it really held back the film at the top of the film in a way that was just not good for the film. It was very difficult to lose them. It was always hard, you know, killing your darlings and actually, you know, having to lose some scenes that were good. But having said that, we just felt in numerous screenings of the film that it was just much better for the film to lose it, and that most people, I know some people, and you know, whatever percentages we might put on it, it could be 10 to 20%, have an issue or a difficulty with trying to actually, you know, they have questions surrounding Fred's backstory that maybe they had struggled with in terms of making a connection with Fred. And I can understand that, but I generally feel it was the right decision to cut the scenes, because I think by and large, most people go with it and go with his character. Primarily, I have to say, and I'm not just saying it because he's on the stage, but because the character is just, Colm did such a great job that the character is just so intensely hypnotic that you just go into his world and you stay there. And so, I don't think people, you get hung up on his blazer too much, or, do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
What's it like for you? I mean, you have then played the background story of Fred, and then it's not in the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, we shot a number of scenes where prior to coming to Ireland, the scenes we shot, Fred was actually working. He was working in a factory, a toy factory, but he wasn't making enough to. The way we figured it out was he'd lost a number of jobs over the years, and had sort of descended the ladder. And you see him at the end of his time in this final job he has in a toy factory, packing jigsaw puzzles. Right? And we actually shot that. And he completely screws it up, and he's fired. And he goes out and you realise he's already living in his car, even though he has this job. It's a very menial job, and he doesn't make enough money to be able to afford a house. So he's in England, he's living in his car, he's working in a toy factory, he loses his job, he's completely on his, he's last resort, go back to Ireland. So that's when the ferry pulls in, he's coming off. So he actually very recently did have a job and did have the ability to buy a jacket or to buy he hasn't been living in doorways for 20 years, This is basically the explanation.
Noch Fragen? Weitere Fragen? Also als erstes war ein großes Kompliment für den Film. Er mochte die Kamera, das Licht, die Schauspieler. Und er hat eine ganz simple Frage, und zwar fragt er sich, was war in der Plastiktüte im Auto?
Yeah.
On top of.
On top of, yeah. Well, the answer to that is, I'm not telling you. We figured that that Fred inhabiting his car would obviously not have enough room for some of his stuff, and there are some things that that are in your imagination that are in those bags on top of. It's parked too. Fred returns, and this time means business.
Also nochmal ein großes Kompliment für den Film. Der Zuschauer mochte ihn sehr gerne. Die Frage ist, es war eben der erste lange Spielfilm, den er gemacht hat. Plant er denn weitere?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've definitely more than bitten the bug of having. I think I kind of have to make more feature films, if that answers your question. I think making movies, as Colm would well know, is it's almost a need or something, isn't it? It's a strange disease that you get, that you have to do. And I suppose I have a couple of movies in a few movies in development, and I'm hoping to shoot a picture next year about a men's self-help group who rob a bank.
Ist noch Fragen? Ja, Sie haben sehr viele schöne Locations und Orte von Dublin gezeigt. Wie groß ist die Rolle, die Dublin im Film spielt? Wie wichtig ist der Ort für den Film?
You might have something to say about it. I mean, yeah. I mean, well, I suppose if the question is this a strong representation of Dublin and how it is right now? I think it's a particular interpretation that's modern and accurate to a large degree, and I think it's just very consistent with the characters. And ultimately, we wanted this to be a universal film and to play anywhere. So it wasn't set out to be sort of typically Irish or Dublin in any idiosyncratic way. So I think that we kind of achieved that, I'd like to think, but others may disagree. Colm, it's an interesting one because Colm obviously knows Dublin so well, and obviously he knew the locations where I'd be interested myself in terms of when you. No, but you know what I mean. When you were shooting the.
The funny thing is,
you know, you say that I know Dublin so well because I was born there and I grew up there, and I've been back and forth all the time for many years. But we went to places on this movie, locations that I did not recognise. I could have been in Gothenburg. You know, Dublin has changed so much in the last 20 years. To me it was a kind of an education of what's happened to Dublin. Actually, some of the locations we went to. So, you know, and I thought that was captured in the film. I mean, the car park. You've Jules's house. You've downtown, and you've kind of the new bridges and some of the new buildings and things like that. And it kind of, I think it was a very good illustration of what Dublin is as both architecturally and kind of socially today.
Gibt's noch Fragen? Sie wollte wissen, ob ihr noch weiter Aquarobics macht.
Absolutely, every morning. don't I like it?
Hier gab es noch eine Frage. Im Abspann gab es 2 Namen, da stand davor In Memory of. Wollen Sie was dazu sagen?
Yeah, one of them was a relative of Colin Morgan who died during the making of the movie, and the other was also a relative of one of the producers who died during the making of the movie. So that's who they are.
Was waren die Inspirationen? Das war ja Ihr Debütfilm. Gab es Referenzfilme?
Yeah, well, two directors that influenced me strongly in the preparation for the film generally were Thomas McCarthy, who is a small independent American filmmaker who would have made films like The Visitor and The Station Agent, if anyone knows those pictures. And then Alejandro Ruda Gonzalez is also a big influence on me kind of generally with films like 21 Grams and Babel and others, you know. So I hope that answers your question.
Noch Fragen? Bitte.
Why have you chosen a Mazda 626?
Auf die Frage habe ich gewartet. Warum haben Sie einen Mazda 626 gewählt? Why did you choose a Mazda 626?
Because my father used to drive one.
Okay, wir danken Ihnen ganz herzlich. Es war sehr schön, dass Sie da waren. Ich möchte Ihnen noch sagen, der Film startet am kommenden Donnerstag, den 29. November, bundesweit in den Kinos. Wenn er Ihnen gefallen hat, bitte sagen Sie es weiter, sodass möglichst viele Zuschauer gleich am ersten Wochenende ins Kino kommen. We thank you very much. Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure. And we hope to see you soon again here in Stuttgart. Thank you.
Just once again, I'd like to thank Duafilm and also all you guys for coming along and seeing the movie. Thanks very much indeed. I'm sure Colin would echo that too.